Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Sharon can't give up, Sally's predicament, Kane's outcome. According to spoilers for the upcoming 3 weeks of The Young and the Restless, which run from August 18th to September 5th, Sharon Newman will discover that she is unable to give up. There will be some intriguing obstacles in Genoa City as Kane Ashby wants results and Sally Spectra faces a difficult situation. Claire Newman's blabbing and Nate Hastings' pressure throughout the week of August 18th to 22nd will make Audra Charles apologize for her awful actions. Holden Novak will lash out at Daniel Romalotti Jr. while Nate is furious over Audra's breakup plan for Victor and all the other shady things she's done to Kyle Abbott. Holden will worry that Daniel was hired by Kane to get information and get dirt since he will ask too many questions. After denying that, Daniel will come to appreciate Tessa Porter in whole different ways. Daniel will desire more than friendship the more time he spends with Tessa. He'll make a startling choice with Victor Newman that might surprise even his closest loved ones. Victor might pull a power move that his family isn't prepared for. Regarding Phyllis, she will take on Kane's first task and risk a lot, provided it entails the hacking he asked for. Phyllis will have to demonstrate her value since Kane will be quite clear that he expects results. Audra might make an unsuccessful attempt to mend her damaged connection with Nate over the week of August 25th to 29th. Kyle and Claire had better keep an eye on Audra because this can arouse her resentment and make her want retribution. If Audra ultimately chooses to accept her friend's employment offer, Sally might also be faced with a difficult choice. Given how spectacularly Audra's life has blown up, could Sally reconsider that offer? Audra's impetuous actions and self-centered nature could make her a liability. Here, we're not exactly discussing an excellent team player. Sally was placed in charge by Billy Abbott, but there may still be some conflicts over hiring decisions at Abbott Communications. Sharon might be on a mission relating to motherhood during the week of September 1st to 5th. When it comes to supporting her daughter, Sharon cannot just give up. Even if Mariah Copeland begged Sharon to back off and threatened to separate herself if she didn't listen. According to Y&R teasers, Sharon will unavoidably try to help Mariah and encourage her to open up again at some point. Mariah may eventually come clean about the entire smothering stranger experience if Sharon manages to catch her at a very vulnerable time. She might get the 3 dress options she promised Christine Blair for her wedding over with Lauren Fenmore Baldwin. Although Christine and Danny Romalotti aren't being married until October, Lauren will undoubtedly want to finalize the bridal gown selection well in advance of the wedding. Lastly, Victor's marriage to Nikki Newman may suffer as a result of his attempts to take down Jabbo. Nikki might be tempted to undermine their efforts and attempt to assist Jack in saving his family business if the Newmans team up with Kane on this, as Victor desires. Something like that might enrage Victor and cause him to clash with Nikki in the near future. Stay tuned for additional updates on Victor's conflict with Jack, as spoilers for The Young and the Restless indicate that he will need to modify his tactics along the way. Sharon Newman found herself caught in a familiar storm, one she thought she had escaped years ago, but the truth was that her heart simply would not allow her to give up. Especially not on her daughter, not on her family, not on the small victories that she still believed she could claim in Genoa City. According to spoilers for the upcoming 3 weeks of The Young and the Restless, running from August 18th to September 5th, Sharon's relentless persistence would be tested. Kane Ashby's demand for tangible results would push others into dangerous territory, and Sally Spectra would find herself facing a predicament that could either elevate her career or destroy her fragile standing. The week of August 18th to 22nd would begin with Claire Newman's inability to keep her mouth shut, leading to gossip and revelations that rippled across town, while Nate Hastings' constant pressure finally cornered Audra Charles, forcing her into an apology for her awful actions. Audra's half-hearted admission of guilt would do little to repair the wreckage she left behind, but it would serve as the first domino that sent others crashing. Holden Novak, never one to stay quiet, lashed out at Daniel Romalotti Jr., his accusations sharp, his suspicions justified. Holden believed Daniel's questions were not innocent curiosity but part of a calculated mission, convinced that Kane had planted Daniel in his orbit to dig up dirt and leverage information. Daniel, taken aback but unwilling to let Holden see him rattled, denied the accusation with firm resolve. Yet Holden's paranoia sparked something in Daniel, a recognition that his alliances needed to be more carefully chosen, and a sudden awareness of how vulnerable he had become. As the days progressed, Daniel found himself looking at Tessa Porter in a completely different light. It wasn't just admiration for her artistry or gratitude for her friendship. It was something deeper, something dangerous, something that made him question the boundaries of his own heart. Tessa, still devoted to Mariah but emotionally weathered by recent hardships, noticed Daniel's lingering gaze and felt both flattered and unsettled. The more time Daniel spent with her, the more he craved, until a startling choice began forming in his mind, one that involved Victor Newman of all people. Daniel, historically wary of Victor's manipulations, realized that an alliance with the patriarch could shield him from Holden's wrath and give him a foothold in the power plays unfolding across Genoa City. Victor, of course, saw Daniel's approach as both amusing and useful. He could twist Daniel's desperation into leverage, a card to play when the Abbott-Newman feud escalated further. This decision shocked Daniel's closest loved ones, who could never have predicted he would willingly tie himself to Victor's machinations. Meanwhile, Kane Ashby grew more impatient with every passing hour. He had given Phyllis Summers her first real task, something risky, something illegal, something that required her to prove her worth, and he made it abundantly clear that he expected results. Phyllis, knowing the stakes, knew this wasn't just about impressing Kane, it was about survival. The hacking assignment he handed her was complex, dangerous, and left little margin for error. She would have to demonstrate skill and precision, because Kane's tolerance for failure was non-existent. He had been burned too many times by disloyal partners and half-baked promises. If Phyllis wanted to stay in his orbit, she needed to deliver. Across town, Sally Spectra was caught in a web of uncertainty that threatened to choke her. Billy Abbott had placed her in charge at Abbott Communications, a responsibility she did not take lightly, but cracks were already beginning to show. Rumors circulated that Audra might accept an employment offer elsewhere, and Sally found herself agonizing over whether she should reconsider Audra as an option for her team, despite the chaos Audra carried like a storm cloud. Audra's impulsive, self-centered behavior made her a liability, yet there was also undeniable talent beneath the mess. Sally's predicament grew heavier when Billy, always quick to assert his influence, questioned her judgment in hiring decisions. Conflict brewed, professional trust eroded, and Sally began to fear she was standing on quicksand. Meanwhile, Sharon was moving on a parallel track, consumed by motherhood once again. Despite Mariah Copeland's desperate pleas for space and threats to distance herself if Sharon didn't back off, Sharon simply couldn't give up. Her instincts screamed that Mariah was still hiding pain from the smothering stranger incident, and Sharon refused to let her daughter drown in silence. Over the week of September 1st to 5th, Sharon would once again push boundaries, trying to reach Mariah in vulnerable moments, hoping to encourage her to open up. Mariah, fragile yet fiercely defensive, pushed back hard, but Sharon's persistence eventually chipped at the walls. If Sharon caught her daughter in just the right emotional state, Mariah might finally crack, confessing the full truth of her lingering trauma. Sharon's mission wasn't only about control. It was about love, about the part of her that could never stop being a mother, no matter how old her children grew. In the midst of these emotional battles, lighter threads intertwined with heavier ones. Sharon promised Christine Blair 3 dress options for her upcoming wedding, and with Lauren Fenmore Baldwin's help, she worked to make good on that promise. Though Christine and Danny Romolotti's wedding wasn't until October, Lauren insisted on finalizing gown choices well in advance, proving that even in a town plagued by betrayal and corporate warfare, moments of beauty still mattered. Yet darker shadows loomed. Victor Newman, never satisfied unless he was in the driver's seat, prepared to launch an offensive against Jabbo. His obsession with bringing down Jack Abbott threatened to fracture not only the Abbott family but also his own marriage. Nikki Newman, unwilling to stand idly by while Victor bulldozed through morality, considered undermining his schemes. Her loyalty to her husband clashed violently with her empathy for Jack, and if Victor attempted to use Kane as a pawn in his Jabbo takedown, Nikki might finally draw her line in the sand. Her interference would enrage Victor, setting up yet another explosive clash in their storied marriage. Kane's outcome, however, remained the wild card in all of this. His need for results, his reliance on Phyllis, his suspected manipulation of Daniel, and his potential role in Victor's crusade all pointed toward a man walking a razor's edge. If Phyllis failed, he would cut her loose without hesitation. If Holden proved right about Daniel, Kane would exploit that, too. If Victor offered him a place in the Newman war machine, Kane would take it, even if it meant burning every bridge he had left. Kane's hunger for redemption and relevance made him unpredictable, a dangerous ally and an even more dangerous enemy. And so, as Genoa City braced itself for the next 3 weeks of chaos, betrayals, and shifting alliances, Sharon couldn't give up, Sally couldn't decide, and Kane couldn't be stopped, each of them carrying their own burdens, each of them shaping the outcomes that would echo far beyond September 5th. Sharon Newman's inability to give up wasn't just stubbornness, it was the very essence of her soul. She had been through mental health struggles, marriages that collapsed, children lost and found, and countless betrayals. Yet through all of it, she held fast to the one truth that defined her. Her family was everything. That truth became painfully clear when Mariah Copeland slammed the door on her, demanding that Sharon stop meddling in her recovery. Mariah's pleas to back off cut Sharon deeply, but it only intensified her resolve. The spoilers teased that Sharon would get her chance during the week of September 1st to 5th, when Mariah, fragile and exhausted, would finally let down her guard. Sharon would be there, like she always was, refusing to accept silence as an answer. Sharon's mission wasn't only about forcing confessions, it was about breaking the cycle of secrecy that had cost her so much in her own life. She saw herself in Mariah, a younger Sharon who bottled up pain until it festered. For Sharon, stepping back wasn't an option. She would rather risk her daughter's anger than risk losing her to unspoken trauma. At the same time, Sharon's maternal instincts pulled her into other dramas. Faith's sporadic updates from college left Sharon suspicious that her youngest wasn't telling her the whole story about her new independence. Noah's absence from Genoa City still stung, leaving Sharon desperate to hold on to the children who remained close by. And then there was the strange pull toward Claire Newman. Sharon couldn't quite explain it, but something about Claire's vulnerability made her want to step in, as if mentoring Claire could fix pieces of herself that still felt broken. This urge would put Sharon at odds with Nikki Newman, who distrusted Claire despite the younger woman's attempts at redemption. Sharon, however, would argue that people deserved second chances, even if Nikki rolled her eyes at the suggestion. While Sharon fought personal battles, Sally Spectra's predicament deepened into a full-on crisis. At Abbott Communications, her authority was already in question. Billy Abbott's decision to put her in charge came with strings attached, namely his own tendency to interfere. He couldn't resist second-guessing her choices, undermining her authority in subtle ways that made Sally question whether she was truly trusted or merely tolerated. Then came the Audra Charles problem. On paper, Audra was everything a media company should want: smart, savvy, connected, and ambitious. But in practice, Audra was toxic. She left a trail of chaos wherever she went, from Nate Hastings' shattered trust to Kyle Abbott's bitterness over their failed romance. Sally understood that bringing Audra on board could give Abbott Communications a competitive edge, but it could also set fire to everything she was trying to build. Her friends warned her to steer clear, pointing out Audra's reputation as self-serving and manipulative. Still, Sally remembered what it was like to be branded as a schemer, an outsider who nobody trusted. Deep down, she wondered if Audra was worth betting on, not because she was safe, but because she understood the hunger of a woman desperate to prove herself. That hunger mirrored Sally's own. She was haunted by her failures at Forrester, haunted by her losses in love, haunted by the gnawing thought that she might never be more than a convenient placeholder in Genoa City's power games. Running Abbott Communications was her shot at redemption, and if she blew it, she feared she would be remembered only for her mistakes. Every time Billy raised an eyebrow at her decisions, every time Kyle questioned her competence, every time Victor Newman hinted at his disapproval of Abbott maneuvers, Sally felt the walls closing in. She needed a bold move to secure her future, but boldness could just as easily backfire. This was her predicament: play it safe and risk irrelevance, or take a gamble that could either crown her a queen or strip her of her throne. Kane Ashby, meanwhile, had no intention of playing safe. He was all in, and the stakes couldn't be higher. His partnership with Phyllis Summers was already a volatile gamble, one that could either give him the edge he needed or implode spectacularly. By tasking Phyllis with hacking, Kane had drawn a line: succeed and prove yourself, or fail and get discarded. Phyllis, for her part, knew the danger she was in. If she came up short, Kane wouldn't just cut ties, He might expose her or set her up as the fall girl. Her loyalty wasn't to Kane, not really. It was to her own survival. Yet something about his ruthless clarity intrigued her. Kane didn't sugarcoat. He didn't promise safety. He made demands, and in his own way, that honesty was refreshing compared to the endless manipulations of others. Still, Kane was skating on thin ice. His enemies were circling, his allies mistrusted him, and his connection to Victor Newman's plans made him a marked man. Victor, ever the strategist, was watching Kane closely. The idea of pulling Kane into his war against Jack Abbott appealed to Victor, not because he trusted Kane, but because he could use him as a pawn. Kane was ambitious enough to do Victor's dirty work and desperate enough to accept scraps in return. If Kane succeeded, Victor would claim the victory. If Kane failed, he'd take the fall. But Kane wasn't oblivious to this dynamic. He knew exactly how Victor operated. His challenge would be to flip the script, to turn Victor's manipulation into leverage of his own. This is what made Kane dangerous. He wasn't afraid of playing against giants. He thrived on proving people wrong, and he carried the scars of being underestimated too many times. Holden Novak's paranoia only added fuel to Kane's story. By accusing Daniel Romalotti Jr. of being Kane's plant, Holden had unwittingly given Kane cover. The suspicion created noise, and Kane knew how to thrive in noise. Daniel's surprising alignment with Victor shocked many, but to Kane, it was an opportunity. If Daniel wanted protection and power, Kane could provide both, at a price. The alliance web was growing tighter, and Kane was at the center, weaving threads with ruthless precision. Audra Charles, meanwhile, spiraled deeper into resentment. Her apology to Nate Hastings had been shallow, a bandage on a wound she herself inflicted, and when Nate refused to forgive her, she turned her frustration outward. Kyle Abbott became her next fixation. Seeing him with Claire Newman made her blood boil. Jealousy, pride, and rejection merged into a volatile cocktail that left Audra teetering on the edge of revenge. If Sally even considered hiring her, Audra would see it as validation, but if she was rejected outright, there would be hell to pay. Sally knew this, which only made her decision harder. Aligning with Audra could mean inheriting her enemies, Kyle, Nate, and possibly even Victor, who had little patience for unpredictable wild cards. Meanwhile, Sharon's persistence with Mariah set off its own ripple effects. Tessa Porter, caught in the middle, felt torn. On one hand, she wanted Sharon to back off, to let Mariah heal in her own way. On the other hand, she saw Sharon's love for her daughter and wondered if maybe Mariah needed that persistence more than she realized. Daniel's growing interest in Tessa complicated things further. His feelings were obvious, even if he tried to disguise them under the guise of friendship. Tessa, vulnerable and longing for stability, found herself unexpectedly flattered. The spoilers hinted at a startling choice Daniel would make involving Victor Newman, but the emotional undercurrent was clear. He was falling for Tessa, and if he pursued it, the fallout would be catastrophic. Nikki Newman's discontent with Victor's schemes threatened to fracture their marriage. The idea of teaming up with Kane to dismantle Jabbo didn't sit well with her, not only because she despised Kane's methods, but because she sympathized with Jack. Nikki had fought hard for her sobriety and her moral compass, and she wasn't about to let Victor drag her into another war that blurred right and wrong. If she openly defied Victor, though, the clash between them could become one of their fiercest in years. Victor wasn't a man who tolerated betrayal, even from his wife. Nikki, however, wasn't a woman who tolerated being silenced. Their impending conflict wasn't just about business, it was about the very survival of their marriage. And through all of this chaos, the connective tissue remained. Sharon's refusal to give up, Sally's precarious balancing act, and Kane's relentless pursuit of power. Sharon embodied emotional persistence, Sally embodied professional dilemma, and Kane embodied ruthless ambition. Each of them was a mirror of the other in some way. Sharon's inability to walk away mirrored Sally's need to prove herself, and Sally's indecision mirrored Kane's clarity of vision. Together, their stories painted a portrait of Genoa City at war with itself, families divided, loyalties tested, and futures hanging by a thread. Sharon Newman's journey was far from simple. Every morning, she woke up with the weight of her children's choices pressing on her chest, as though motherhood itself was a permanent tether she couldn't untie even if she wanted to. Mariah's words, harsh, cold, desperate, still echoed in her mind, telling her to back off or risk permanent estrangement. But Sharon couldn't shake the nightmare that if she let go, she would lose her daughter completely. It wasn't only about protecting Mariah from the trauma of the smothering stranger. It was about Sharon's own lifelong pattern of watching her loved ones suffer because she didn't act soon enough. How could she repeat that mistake again? Nick Newman had reminded her more than once that pushing too hard could backfire, that Mariah needed to set her own pace for recovery. Yet Sharon wasn't wired to walk away. As spoilers hinted, Sharon's persistence would eventually pierce Mariah's armor, but the fallout could just as easily fracture their bond before it healed it. For Sharon, this wasn't just a mission of compassion, it was survival. The idea of losing another child was unbearable, and she would rather risk Mariah's fury than the silence of regret. Outside of her maternal struggles, Sharon found herself unexpectedly caught in Victor Newman's storm. His latest campaign to destroy Jabot rippled across Genoa City, pulling in allies and enemies alike. Sharon didn't want to get dragged into corporate wars, but her connections to both the Abbotts and the Newmans made neutrality nearly impossible. Jack confided in her during a quiet evening at Society, telling her how much Nikki's waffling loyalty worried him. Sharon listened carefully, offering gentle